Hello and welcome to the next video on Ashes of Creation. Today we're going to be going over player housing and everything you need to know about it. So let's just get straight into it. In today's video we'll be going over housing, which includes node housing, houses, apartments and freeholds. Now apartments and houses are different and we'll go into how now. When a node advances to a level 3 stage, which is a village stage, houses and apartments will be available for sale within that node. Now apartments will not change size, but houses will as the node levels up. At the level 3 stage there will be 50 apartments available and we don't know how many houses, and at the level 3 stage these houses will be the size of small cottages. Now the reason you're going to want to get these places is because you can fill them with furniture, which will give your players in-game buffs, and you'll also have a small farm where you can grow your own ingredients. As well as this, it will grant you citizenship to the node, which will grant you perks based on the type of node it is, the size of the node, and the majority race living there, as well as things like religions later on in the game. If you buy a cottage at the village stage, as the node advances, this cottage will get bigger. So when it gets to a town stage, this will become a house, and when it gets to the metropolis stage, this will become a mansion. However, the apartments will not change size, so as the node increases, your house will increase in size and also increase in value. So you could buy a cottage at the village stage and sell at the metropolis stage and make a huge profit. However, with an apartment you do get all the perks, but the value does not increase. Both apartments and houses can be destroyed during a node siege. So if your node gets attacked and your building happens to be destroyed by a siege weapon, it's gone, there's nothing else you can do. The only other way you can lose your housing is if you refuse to pay your taxes, and then the government of the node can claim the house back. There will also be a permission system where you can allow other players into your house, as well as a marriage system which allows a family within the game to have an entire house. Co-ownership means that multiple people can also pay taxes on the actual house itself. Houses will also provide a place for social activities and a huge amount of extra storage to put all your gear and resources in. Finally, the amount of houses inside a node will be fixed, but the amount of apartments are not. So the node government can decide to allocate taxes to increase the amount of apartments in a node, allowing more people to become citizens of that node, which in turn allows them to collect higher taxes and allows the node to become more powerful. However, they may be doing this at the detriment of something else, like a defensive building. Now on to freeholds. Now freeholds are also in-game housing, but they are not within the node itself. They're within the node's zone of influence, which is like the territory that city controls around it. Now there is only a few places that they cannot be placed. So a freehold cannot be placed too close to the node city. It cannot be placed too close to a roadway. It cannot be placed too close to a dungeon or other point of interest, regardless of its advancement. And it cannot be close to a spawn area, other freehold plots, or hard terrain features such as mountainsides or cliffs. In order to build a freehold, you will require a certificate from the parent node in order to place the plot. It has not been explained exactly how you get the certificate, however it's possible that you could buy them from the government, or that you have to complete a quest in order to do so. There will be a limit on the amount of freeholds each node can have, however this amount will increase the higher up that node levels. The different kinds of freehold buildings that have been released so far are blacksmiths, which will be creating weapons and armor, forges, which will be smelting raw materials, iron and other metals into actual ingots, freehold farms, which will be creating food, guild halls, which as you might guess is a place for guilds to gather, homesteads, which means it's much like your house inside of a node but you've decided to place it outside of a node, an inn where someone can actually come and claim housing for a price for a short amount of time, so this is like a temporary apartment that you can get within the game. Lumber yards, which will provide wood, and this is probably going to be important for node development and node building. As we mentioned before, the mayor can decide to spend taxes on in-node housing. It's possible he would actually need the materials as well as the money in order to do so, in which case the lumber yards would be the one being paid. Mills, which will be creating large amounts of raw materials for food to be created. Shrines, which will be a place for followers of a certain religion to go and get buffs or make offerings. Smelters, stables, which will be a place for horses to be kept, and other mounts within the game. You can upgrade the stables to the point where they can even house dragons. And finally, taverns, which will be a place for players to meet up. There will also be small quest lines that begin appearing at taverns, and there will also be parlour games. In order to build your freehold, you will need blueprints and materials. Now, this will probably require an engineer of some sort within the game to help you build your freehold. Freehold buildings will not change in terms of footprint within specific tiers, but will increase in height in certain cases. Certain buildings will have multiple tiers with different footprint sizes. So, for example, the tavern may start off as a 1-floor building, but may increase to being 2 floors with extra space for parlour games later on in the game. And if you are going for just a home, a small cottage-sized home may take up 50% of the freehold plot, but the mansion-sized home will only take up 50% of the freehold plot still, so that you have space for a garden and farming, but could be 3 or even 4 stories high. You can also apply cosmetics to a blueprint based on the type of building, so that it can look cooler than the other buildings around it. And finally, much like with in-node housing, you will have to place all furniture and items within the freehold yourself. You will either have to go buy them or build them yourself. Now, the progression of freeholds are based on the amount of time they've been around and the productivity. So it's not going to be as simple as you pay or build for your freehold to be leveled up. It has to be operating for a certain number of time, and it has to be producing and potentially selling goods. So it's not enough to have a tavern in the middle of nowhere that isn't doing anything. That tavern has to have been there for quite a while, and it has to have people using it if you want it to upgrade. It has been stated that resources will be different in the Underrealm, which will affect farming and animal husbandry professions. So you may want to put your freehold there if you want to have a more unique kind of farming or animal husbandry to offer to the node. And just before we wrap up, it is important for me to mention that you can only have one amount of in-node housing per server, and you can only have one freehold per account. This is very important because it means that even if you're playing on multiple different servers, you can still only have one freehold, even though you can have multiple housing on those different servers. So if you really wanted multiple different businesses, multiple different freeholds, you would have to actually create multiple alternate accounts within Ashes of Creation in order to do so. Just like in many other things in Ashes of Creation, there is a risk versus reward when you are buying your in-game housing. Even at the very beginning stage, if you decide to purchase a cottage at the village stage, this is going to be way more expensive than purchasing an apartment, but it could pay off later down the road when the node increases in size. However, you're taking a risk there because you don't know how powerful that node is going to be. As well as this, when buying cottages or apartment buildings, you're running the risk that at some point your node gets attacked and you lose everything. There's a bit less risk with a freehold, but with that being said, there's also the risk that no one comes to your freehold because you haven't placed it in an area where lots of people go through. So you have to pick the area you're placing your freehold very carefully. Anyway, that is everything I could possibly find out about in-game housing. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already, and have an amazing day. Thank you.